Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got Lorraine Ball with us today. She's a marketing strategist and she is coming out of Indiana. And what's really interesting is she's going to talk to us about the top three questions you should ask yourself, as well as she's going to talk about, she sold her marketing agency. So she's going to talk about the things to look out for and the things to plan, prepare with the exit in mind. So I'm really happy to have her on. So Lorraine, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I know we met through Podmatch and talk about your journey, introduce yourself, and how the audience can benefit from your expertise.
Journey, a bumpy road. I think, like a lot of people, I didn't end up doing what I started out to do, but I did about 20 years in corporate. And then I walked away, started my own business, and ran an agency that started as a traditional marketing company and evolved into a digital agency before I sold it a few years ago. And along the way, I started a podcast because it was a great way to build connections in my community. It was a great way to build connections with other marketing professionals. And when I sold the business, I kept the podcast. So if people are looking for me, you can find Lorraine Ball on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me. Or look for my podcast, More Than a Few Words. And these days, I teach marketing at a local university and I work with clients on their marketing strategies.
Interesting, because I'm a marketer at heart and I really love this idea. So talk about, the keys to your success, like what made you successful, and then also the people that are starting to build their personal brand and getting the marketing. What are those top three questions that you are referring to?
So I think one of the things that really made me and then ultimately the agency successful was figuring out kind of core values. And for us, one of the core values was always curiosity. We spent a lot of time on the bleeding edge of technology. Every time there was a new platform or a new software tool that came along, I was like, okay, somebody go test this. Let's try it. Let's see, does it fit? Does it replace something that we're already doing? And I had a friend tell me that I wasn't on the leading edge, I was on bleeding edge, and that it was bloody, but it was profitable because we tried a lot of things. And when I talk about the podcast, I started my podcast in 2010. So that was way before it was a thing. It was way before everybody was doing it. And over the years, trying to figure out how it fit or why it fit. And there were a lot of times that we went back and forth on, do we still do it? And I think that's a really important part of that journey. But more than anything else was the curiosity of, how does this thing work? Do we need to play? Does it make sense for us? Does it make sense for our clients? And I would recommend that to anybody starting a business.
Yeah, I really love that. And what you were referring to earlier on, we were talking backstage and you talking about these questions that everybody should consider. So what are those questions?
So when you're starting a marketing campaign, whether it's a marketing strategy for your total business or you've got a business up and running and you're working on a particular campaign, three questions, and they're really simple, but they're not. First question is, who is your customer? And I can't tell you how many times I'd go to a networking event and somebody would say, I work with small to medium sized businesses. No, you don't. You work with small or you work with mid-sized businesses. And if you're creating a marketing campaign, it's not the same campaign, because what's important to a small business owner and what's top of mind for them is very different than a senior manager in a mid-sized business. And so you got to figure out, who are you talking to? We're working with women 25 to 60. No, you're not. They may all buy from you, but there's a center of your circle, because the reality is you put my 25-year-old niece, my 40-year-old daughter, me, and one of my other friends in a room together, and we're going to have very different needs. We're going to have very different interests. And if you want to talk to us, you can't use the same language. Number one, Who is your customer? And it's okay to have multiple customers and recognize that you got to create campaigns for each of them. That's number one. Number two, who is your competitor? And I love this. I used to work with a lot of tech firms, and they're like, this is a brand new software. There's nothing like it out there. We don't have any competitors. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Because yesterday, before you introduced your product, I got news for you. Your customers were solving that problem. It may not be the way that you're going to solve it. It may not be as good as what you're doing, but they had a solution and you're competing with that solution. And there are levels of customers. There's tier one customers that do exactly what you do. You're a marketing firm. I'm a marketing firm. We're tier one competitors, right? If I'm a business owner and I want to grow my business, I might hire a marketing company or I might hire a business coach. We're going to provide totally different services, but we're both going to address the problem of growing your business. And that's a tier two competitor. They solve the problem in a different way. A tier three competitor doesn't even solve the problem. So how are they a competitor? Your customer is going to make a decision to spend money with you or them. I could hire a marketing company this month, or I could buy a new computer. You don't solve the same problem. You don't do the same things. But if there's only this much money, you got to convince customers to spend it with you. And so once you know who your customer is and you know what their priorities are, then you got to figure out, where are you facing the most competition? And the third, these are simple questions, right? Third question is, what are you trying to accomplish? Oh, I want to sell stuff. Good. Good start. Do you want to sell stuff more to your existing customers? Do you want to sell to new customers? Do you want to sell more of your new product or your old product? Do you want to get people to enroll in a program? Do you want more sale? Do you want to increase the dollar value of the sales, or do you want a lot of little sales? And how fast do you want it? Each one of those questions will change the kind of marketing you do. So before you start working on your marketing campaign, answer those three questions. Who's your customer? Who are you competing with? And what do you really want to do? That's it.
Yeah, would. It's spoken like a true marketer. And the more marketers I talk to, it's very strategic. And like I said, it's always like around the product market fit. Next question I have for you is these three things, and the audience that are interested in hearing more about and finding out, they can, contact you. One thing is that was interesting is you talked about beginning with the end in mind, and you talked about selling it, and you had a podcast. So talk about your approach to, building a business and building a media company, and how can people exit or profit from your endeavors?
So you just started this new business. You're all excited. It's a great business. You're a couple weeks or a couple months in and you're like, it's great. I'm not saying that you're going to sell it tomorrow or next year, but you need to build something that you can sell. And there are two reasons. The first is, if you build this business with that idea at the point that you're ready to let go, and somebody comes along and says, hey, I'd like to buy your business, you have something of value to sell. And we'll talk about what builds value in a minute. The second reason is that when you sell your business, particularly if you're either a solopreneur or it's a small business, but really the company revolves around you, right? One of the concerns of any prospective buyer is, what happens to the business when you walk away? If you have built a business that can run without you, that continues even if you're out of the equation, you have built something you can sell. And along the way, you can take vacations. Yeah, I ran the business for 19 years. It was probably 8 years, other than a long weekend here, 3, 4 days there. I didn't take vacations. I was afraid to be away from my business. And finally, we took the vacation. I was away for a week. I was on the phone constantly, but I was away. And then the next year, I left the country. I was in Japan for 2 weeks. And so I could call in, but when I was awake, they were asleep. And so really, I wasn't there. And you know what? They landed and closed the single biggest sale in my company's history. And I was fine. And they got the customer started. And when I came back, it was fun. And that taught me that the more I could standardize my processes, the more I could build a business that ran without me. It ran better when I was there, but it ran without me. How do you do that? The first thing that you have to do is standardize all of your procedures. You have to have systems, even if it's just you and you're like, but I'm doing all the things. Someday you're going to want to hire a virtual assistant. Someday you're going to want to hire somebody to come and work for you. How are they going to know what to do? And if the company grows, you're going to have a lot of somebodies. When I started the business, I had a project tracking system that I had taken from my corporate days. It was ridiculously complicated for a little business run by one person, right? It anyway. And 19 years later, if a customer called me and said, hey, Lorraine, I don't even know if you remember me. 12 years ago, you designed a logo for me. And I was always wondering, do you still have the original art files? Yes, I do. Give me 1 minute. And I could look them up and I could find that file on my server. And so I could do it, but then I taught that system to all of my employees. So anytime the phone rang and someone said, we've never met, but 6 years ago, 7 years ago, a year ago, Lorraine, you guys did this for me. My teammate could say, yes, I found your project in our system. What do you need? And so when I sold the business, it wasn't just my current customers, but it was 19 years of history, hundreds of websites and logos that people would keep coming back to us because we could still help them. That had value in the time that I was running the business, and it had value afterwards. Systems, processes, those kind of things. There is just no replacement for that when it's time to sell your business and when you're up and running every day.
It's different. It's a different mindset because a lot of the audience, they are self-employed. Basically, they basically own their job versus renting a job. But the next level is business owners. And when you can start to implement the mindsets that you're talking about, you can automate a lot of things. One thing that was going through my mind is what if you have a business owner and they don't want to sell? Like that's what they have a multi-million-dollar and they can run without them, but they don't want to sell it. So what do you have to sell it or what are your thoughts?
No, we're all going to die someday. You may not want to hear that. With this model, with this mindset, if you build a business that you ultimately can sell, it will run without you in the short term. And you can build this tremendously valuable cash machine that generates income so you can go on vacation. So your team can run it and it operates and they send you a check. And that's fine. And in the short term, building those systems made us more efficient. We did not do like when we did web design work. And yes, every website is different, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is underneath that very custom exterior, is the same operating system. It's an automobile plant. The engine, the chassis, all of that is the same. It's just when it gets down to the very end of the line, you start polishing the outside and you put a different paint color. But underneath, every car coming down that line is the same. And when you understand that what you are running, when you're running that kind of company, is a production company, and you start thinking about your business like a manufacturing company, you start looking for ways to simplify, to standardize, to automate. And I don't care whether it's you by yourself or you and 100 people. If you're going to create a sustainable revenue model, I know I said I wasn't a finance geek, but I do understand the basics. If you're going to create a sustainable revenue model, you absolutely must have those systems in place that allow you to do that allow you to avoid reinventing the wheel every time the phone rings. We standardized everything from, I was talking about web design. We used a tool, I'm trying to remember because software companies get bought all the time. And the tool we used in Sightly, which was bought by, I think, today.com. But basically, we had 100 steps and we broke them into sections. And when we moved a project from phase 1 to phase 2, we had 25 tasks that had to get done. And we knew this task went to the web team, this task went to the billing team. And so the emails would go saying, hey, this project is now in this stage and you are responsible for. And so nothing got forgotten. We didn't get to the end of the project and find out we hadn't put an engine in the car. And if it's just something for me, I still use a scaled down version of that same system for my podcast production. And it just reminds me, you've got this episode coming up. Did you send this note? Did you create the graphic? Did you do this? And sometimes I just do it automatically without thinking about it. But then I look at my task list and go, oh, forgot to do that. And it gets done. So whether you're by yourself or with 100 employees, those systems and those automation will keep you on track.
I love that. How can people find out more about you and the work that you do and check out your podcasts and so on?
So you can look for More Than a Few Words anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can go to morethanafewwords.com. And if you're ready to dive into your business, schedule an office hours appointment and we can talk about your marketing and your strategy. And if you're on LinkedIn, look for Lorraine Ball. You'll find me.
I love that. And I really love talking to marketers. And again, this podcast is a business entrepreneurship podcast. So we have all different types of topics that we cover. And for all the audience, be sure to give Lorraine's socials a like and follow. Check out her work, reach out to her. And thanks so much for coming on.